You weren't worried at all. Are you starting to get worried about Foles
Not
in
all,
Philly?
not even a little bit. I mean, I wish I had my latte in front of me. I'd be sipping on it right now, chilling. Philadelphia don't have anything to worry about. I think everybody's overreacted. Look, did you see their offense? As unimpressive as it may have been from time to time, there is no doubt. Could find their running game for the first 3 quarters. We get all of that. But the chemistry and the cohesiveness is there. Nick Foles ain't foreign to them. Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement isn't foreign to them. Nelson Aguilar isn't foreign to them. Mike Wallace might be new to the mix, but Alshon Jeffrey eventually will be back. The point is, Zach Ertz is there as well. Your offensive line is intact. This team is going to be fine. Did you see that defense? Did you see Darby? Did you see Cox? Did you see Brandon Graham? Haloti Ngata, Michael Bennett? I mean, look at these brothers. This team arguably is better than last year's team. What you're talking about with Carson Wentz is holding down the fort for the first month of the season to make sure you don't rush him back prematurely because it's about the marathon. It's not about the sprint.
You weren't a little nervous last night with his performance.
I repeat, 0.
Okay.
I wasn't concerned.
Okay.
Let's remember what I said, Lewis, just so you know, because you weren't here. Last week, what I said was, or earlier this week, what I said was this: run the damn football. Run the football and play smash mouth and beat Atlanta up because they're skilled, they're quick, they're athletic, but they're undersized. Ultimately, if you play physical with them, you could wear them down. Not everybody could do that, but Philly's capable of doing it.
That's basically what it comes down to. Stephen A's chill. Max, how do you feel about it?
I'm not worried about Philadelphia right now. This was the tough game on their schedule in the first 4 weeks of the season. They got lucky and won it. Like, it's not inconceivable that they can run the table with Foles early, like if it's 4 weeks and be 4-0, it could happen. I was thinking if they're 2-2, I'd take it if I was an Eagles fan. 3-1, I'd be psyched. But this was the game I would worry about. It was a worse loss for the Falcons than it was a good win for the Eagles, and they got by it with a win. I wouldn't worry too much, particularly because the Eagles are missing 2 top defensive players, 2 top receivers, and their starting quarterback. Let's keep in mind, Nick Foles was not this bona fide star starter. He was a bubble starter, excellent backup type when they acquired him, and his reputation suffered under Jeff Fisher, as most reputations do under center. And by the way, I also mentioned, as Louis Riddick just pointed out, as much as I don't like preseason games that don't count and wouldn't start any one of my top 44 players in the preseason, the fact is, they were not running RPOs for Nick Foles in the preseason. It was noticeable. That's why he was struggling. And therefore, it's unsurprising that he didn't run it to perfection when they did run it for him in the regular season, particularly against a sneaky good defense like Atlanta. But when you look at the Eagles' schedule, this was the tough game. They got by with a win. If they're 3-3, 2-2, 3-2, something like that, when Wentz gets back, and it could be much sooner than that, they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Nick Foles either because really this is what Nick Foles is. He's a streaky player. Right. He's a guy who can get hot and like he did in the playoffs, like he did in the Super Bowl, and you're sitting there going, now that's who he really is. And the reason why you say that is because that's what you want to believe. You want to believe that's when players play their best, that's what they are overall. But that's not what Nick is. So I'm not worried about him. He's kind of who he is. And I'm not worried about the Eagles, and I think this is the bigger point, is because this is really one of the best coached teams in the NFL, folks. It just is. People took shots at Doug Pederson. Just remember this now. There were people who took shots at Doug Pederson saying he had no business getting this job. Remember, Ben McAdoo was supposed to get – that was the guy who they wanted.
Oh, Lord, okay? That would have been a disaster.
That was the guy who they wanted at Philadelphia. Doug Pederson knows how to connect with players and his quarterbacks in particular. Last night, when they ran Philly last night, again, it was the same thing like the Super Bowl. Yeah. He kind of talked to Nick. They ran it. It kind of got the team going. Next thing you know – he made just enough plays in the passing game to win the game, and they relied on the running game and the defense.
Hold on.
They did copy the Patriots.
I got to take issue with something you just said.
What was that?
I like Doug Pederson. He can coach. There is no question about that. I think you're giving too much credit to the wrong person. You're mentioning Doug Pederson. I'm going to tell you it's Jim Schwartz. I'm going to tell you this defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, who's the former head coach for the Detroit Lions. He may not deserve to be a head coach per se as an overseer, but you know who Jim Schwartz reminds me of in terms of mystique, in terms of his impact on the defense? He reminds me of the late great Buddy Ryan. That's who he was. Now, as a head coach, no, you didn't want to look at him like that. But as a defensive coordinator, there's a reason he got carried off the field in 1985 as well. You know, because Buddy Ryan was that kind. And when you look at at Schwartz, right? When you look at this defense, the personnel on this defense, the way they get after you, how physical they can be, the way they instill fear in a lot of cats out there. And that is the reason the Philadelphia Eagles won that game last night. It damn sure wasn't because of their offense. And it damn sure wasn't because of the play calling of Doug Pederson, even though the Philly special is a Philly. It was because of Jim Schwartz's defense.
Yeah, look, but you got to give credit. You got to give credit to the head coach, Stephen A., because when you look at this Eagles team, when it counts, and Lewis just brought this up, when it counts, they get it done on both sides of the ball. They got to be tired at the end of that game. They got to, like, when they're making goal line stands, when they're making key plays on both sides of the ball in high leverage moments with the game on the line. By the way, against the Falcons last year in the playoffs, against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, here in week 1. And that's the head coach. That's who sets the culture, both sides of the ball. Pederson deserves credit for that.
Yeah, look, there's no question. Jim Schwartz has a high football intellect, high football IQ. Stephen A., you're exactly right about that. The guy mixes the subjective, meaning his gut and his instinct, with analytical data to help him make calls, just like this whole football team does. Yes. They're one of the best in the NFL at doing it. The reason why I was talking about Doug is because of this. If you heard Malcolm Jenkins talk at the end of this football game, he started sounding just like they did at the end of last year, which is this. They just believe in each other, man. Mm-hmm. This team just does. And that is something we can't get printouts of that. You can't run some statistical analysis on that. They know that football is this. It's 3 phases. It's 3.5 hours long, approximately, in real time. And over that course of time, they figure this. We're going to band together and make enough plays to beat you more so than you will make to beat us.